Hello, my name is Julie Zaruba Fountain, and welcome to Freedom from the Clock. I'm a well-being specialist and founder of Empower Possible. There's a QR code on your screen, so feel free to pause the video and take a scan of the QR code for some supplemental materials, a free newsletter that will help guide you on this well-being journey. If you are unable to scan the QR code, no worries. There's a website at the end that I'll provide that will also guide you to some supplemental materials. I'd like to start off by giving credit where credit is due. The materials from this presentation are developed and taken from a variety of resources. So first, I developed um, the happy hour workshop that focuses on strengths and mindset. It's also inspired by a conversation that I listened to on the Scott D. Clary Success Story podcast with Dr. Sophia Leroy, specifically the information about attention residue that you'll learn about in a few minutes. And then fourth is the 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Berkman. I'd like to thank UWS for this opportunity to share this important content with you. Now, before we dive in to this content, I'd like to ask you, why did you show up today? What brought you in to listen to this coffee chat? What are you hoping to accomplish? What could distract you from accomplishing those items? And what can you do to free yourself from that distraction? If you want to take a minute to pause the video and think about those things, jot some things down, and then start the video back up and join me in this discussion about freedom from the clock. Today, we are talking about time. The average lifespan is about 80 years. In other words, it's about 4,000 weeks. This coffee chat is about how to make the most of those 4,000 weeks. Thinking of time reminds me of a story a friend once told me. She shared she was gathering with a few friends and they hadn't seen each other in about a decade. One friend shared, at this rate, we're getting together only about once a decade. So I think we'll probably only see each other 3 or 4 more times in my lifetime. She said, I don't know about you, but that really just doesn't seem like enough time. This really got me thinking about how many life events that are really important to me that I just put off for another day, another month, another year, because I just am simply so busy. How many times do I say, it'd be really nice to see you soon? And I really genuinely mean it, but soon ends up being way longer than I intended, simply because, once again, I'm so busy. The point isn't to incite anxiety, but instead to be thoughtful in how you spend your time. And today we will find freedom from the relentless pressures of time. First, we need to understand a little about the concepts of time. There's a certain tyranny of time that exists in our culture. We face these societal pressures from family or friends that have these realistic expectations that we're supposed to follow about how and when we're supposed to be and how productive we're supposed to be. But I'd like to quote Oliver Berkman. Now, this quote may come as a surprise coming from me as a well being specialist, but bear with me as it will make sense by the end of our conversation today. Oliver Berkman states that productivity is a trap and becoming more efficient just makes you more rushed. And trying to be clear, the deck simply makes the deck fill up a lot faster. Nobody in the history of humanity has ever achieved work life balance, whatever that might be. And you certainly won't get there by coping the 6 things successful people do by 7 a.m. The day will never arrive when you finally have everything under control. When the flood of emails has been contained, when the to do lists have stopped getting longer, when you're meeting all your obligations at work and in your home life, when nobody's angry at you for missing a deadline or dropping the ball, and when you fully optimized person you've become can turn at long last to the things life is really supposed to be about. Let's start by admitting defeat. None of this is ever going to happen. But you know what? That's excellent news. Now, this isn't shared to depress you. It's shared to be realistic about time. Time, as the saying goes, marches on, regardless of our to do lists. And we need to accept the fact that we can't control time, it cannot be managed. What we can control is how we think about time, how we think about productivity and what that means to us, and how we prioritize what we want to do in order to free ourselves from the clock. First, we need to understand some myths of time management, including that you can manage time itself. There is something a lot of us may be guilty of. I'm guilty of it too. And that's the myth of multitasking, thinking it's only going to take a minute. I'm just going to switch over to this next task and I'll be able to switch back in 1 minute. That's called attention residue and it leads to mental fatigue. Many people know that multitasking is a myth since our brains aren't just designed to handle more than one task at a time. Attention residue is the concept proving this theory right. We can create the illusion of multitasking by juggling several tasks, but in reality, we're just creating mental fatigue. What makes this even trickier is the fact that when we quote unquote multitask, we're under the illusion that more work is getting done. But hint, hint, no more work is actually getting done. You might be hearing this and thinking to yourself, but I'm the exception to the rule. I can really multitask with going off the rails. If that's the case, which I was part of that group too, I'm sorry to break the news to you, but you're probably just unaware about what's really happening to you psychologically. Attention residue isn't always obvious. Sometimes it is clear as day. You feel your brain fogging up as you switch from one task to the next. Other times it's more subtle and harder to pinpoint. You could feel overwhelmed or have difficulty making decisions. You might feel frustrated because you're always starting tasks but never finishing them, or struggling to focus on something for a prolonged period of time. Some people even experience these strange energy slumps even though they've just had a cup of coffee. In all likelihood, this is caused by attention residue, not just from multitasking, but from any distraction that interrupts your work flow. Dr. Leroy shares attention residue comes into play anytime you switch from one point of focus to another point of focus. However, it doesn't affect everyone equally. It depends on the context of the tasks being completed. Their mere knowledge that you are on a time crunch can increase the amount of attention residue that your brain experiences upon returning to the original task. It could be nice and would be nice if we could all stick to one task consistently. But that's not the reality of the modern workplace. Your boss might come up to you and have an urgent request that you'll have to drop what you're doing. Or you could be in the middle of a project when a colleague or mentee asks for help. So, what can we do to reduce the effects of this attention residue in these situations? Dr. Leroy and her team found that creating a ready to resume intervention plan can significantly reduce attention residue and it can also improve performance on interrupting tasks. Essentially, this involves setting a clear goal before you switch to another task and creating a plan of action for when you return. You know exactly when you'll return to the task at hand, and the pressure of time is removed, and you're more likely to go back to it with a clear head. For instance, say that you estimate the task at hand needs another 2 hours to be completed. Before you switch to the interrupting task, you make a plan to resume the work on the main task at least 2 hours before the end of the day. By creating this plan and clarifying your goals, you reduce the risk of attention residue. The same applies to any task that is interrupted. Set a goal before switching tasks and the end time when you'll return to that task. When the distractions come, and we know they will, you can't simply block them out, but you can control how you manage those distractions. For instance, instead of jumping over to your email inbox when you hear that ping, take a second to note down where you're up to in your current task and when you're going to return. The simple act of grounding yourself in the current task will help you switch back to it with more clarity. If a distraction is something you can easily ignore, then do that. Don't let yourself be tricked into thinking that every distraction must be attended to immediately. There are some things that can wait and that just simply don't need your attention right away. Then leave those things till later. Now, the question also is, what if you're just addicted? Maybe it's not your colleagues distracting you or your Slack messages, but perhaps it's TikTok or YouTube or Instagram. There are many rabbit holes you can go down when trying to cut out social media use. You can download app blockers, delete accounts, and even switch your phone to grayscale mode. But there's only one chat that strategy that I have found effective personally, and that's physical removal of the apps and my phone. In other words, get your phone out of sight and out of the workplace and out of mind. Attention residue is a real problem, and it's one that can be managed with the right strategies. It doesn't matter if your distractions come from external sources like colleagues or environmental factors, or internal sources like addiction to a social media platform or Wordle. What matters is that you take proactive steps to manage them and use the power of your own focus to accomplish these tasks that are most meaningful to you and your team and your family. The truth is, you can't manage your time because you can't control time. You can manage what you can control, and that is your attitude towards time and your behaviors. Now, what is another strategy that you can engage in to help you manage your time usage and help you to let go of that thought of controlling time? We're looking into now our behaviors. In order to better manage our behaviors, we can review how we organize and plan our days. Developing a certain attitude towards time and supporting it with behaviors can lead to reduced stress and improved quality of life. The first step in managing behaviors is thinking about understanding how you currently spend your time. Keeping a time log for a week or two can help identify where your time is going and determine which activities are taking up unnecessary amounts of time. It seems like a lot of work on the front end, but believe me, it's worth it because once you have a clear understanding of your time usage, it's time to set goals for what you want to achieve. Your goals should be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time bound, inclusive, and equitable. If you want more information on those types of goals, please let me know and send me an email, and I can send you more information about that. Next is completing a to do list. It's a simple and effective way to keep track of your tasks and prioritize them. Make sure you review your to do list daily and update it as needed. And here are a few tips for making that to do list. Recognize that you most likely have a list of things that will never get done. Most of the time, our to do lists are unrealistic and they're full of items that we don't need to do. Think about this section of your screen that is demonstrating the Eisenhower matrix. Think about things that are urgent and important and do those things. Next, think about things that you can delegate, things that are urgent but not important. Third, think about things that are not urgent and important. We want to schedule those in our day plan. And then things that are not urgent and not important, you want to limit how often you do those and maybe get rid of them altogether. Put them on your not to do list. Next, we want to think about avoiding distractions. Easier said than done, I know, but time blocking is a scheduling process that helps block time for specific tasks. This can help you stay focused and help with time management, which we know we need to let go of thinking about managing time and controlling time, but it's a way to help you use your time strategically, especially if you have a lot of responsibilities. The next step is thinking how to delegate effectively. What is not important? What is urgent but not important? And those things can be delegated. We also want to take breaks. Now, it may seem counterintuitive to take breaks, but it's an important aspect of taking time strategically as it helps reduce stress and improve productivity, which we need to let go of unrealistic productivity. But we want to be productive so that we have freedom from the clock, so that we can do things that we value most and make our life most meaningful. So we want to schedule regular breaks in the day. It is essential to a more enjoyable work life experience. Doing these things means that you need to stay flexible. Recognize that unexpected things are going to arise, and you need to adjust and prioritize tasks differently as needed. In order to become more flexible, you need to let go of some external pressures so that you're not too rigid in this approach. Effective strategic planning around time means understanding your time usage, recognizing that you won't have time to do everything you want to do, letting go of the feeling you are never doing enough, setting realistic goals, prioritizing tasks, and again, staying flexible. By implementing these, you'll reduce your stress and improve your quality of life. So I'd like to conclude now with our coffee chat with a few quotes. Now, thinking about time and management, Berkman says that a plan is just a thought. It's a statement of your intentions. And it's not a bad thing, but we have to make decisions based off of the information we have right now. But know that time is not always going to comply with our demands. So that's why we want to get away from planning our day with this desperate anxiety for the day to turn out exactly how it needs to be and getting everything done on our to-do list. Instead, just plan your day, release your attachment to a specific goal, and focus on the process. Because the reality is, the only time that we have is the time right now. And this very second is the time that matters most. Now, take a minute to reflect. What is something that you learned? What is something you can do differently starting today? And what is something long term you can do to improve your work life harmony? Go ahead and re listen to certain sections if you wish. Pause the video for a minute or two to journal on these statements, and then come back and join me. Thank you once again for joining. If you have any questions, please email me at info@empowerpossible.com. You can also feel free to visit my website, empowerpossible.com. It's been a pleasure to be with you today.